I love having my friend Victor Davis Hanson on the program. Victor, Hoover Institution Senior Fellow, you really were, if not the first, among the first scholars and intellectuals to say, okay, hold on, everybody. I'm listening to Trump. I'm watching Trump. This man's the real deal. He's very important to this country. You then wrote an entire book on the subject. What did you see, and what do you see today that underscores your early perspective on this?
Well, it was sort of what you were just talking about, Mark, in your monologue, that we've had these iterations of these revolutions, progressive revolution, Wilson, and then there was no reaction by the Republicans of the 1920s. And then we went a little further left, and then we had Roosevelt. Ike couldn't stop it when he came in. And then we had the Great Society, and Nixon couldn't stop it. And all of a sudden there was this voice in the wilderness saying, I'm just not going to stop it. I'm going to turn it back. And these people are cultural revolutionaries. They want to do everything, to the military, to politics, to economics, to social life, to cultural life. And nobody had ever been really talking with that much confidence that you could stop this New Deal, Great Society, progressive tidal wave. And he was the only person talking about it. And everybody thought he was crazy. And I thought, wow, let's give him a chance to try.
And what's remarkable about it, is it not, is this is a man who comes out of, certainly not obscurity, but comes out of business, a tremendous developer in New York. He built their skyline, a huge success in media and entertainment. Seems like everything he touched turns to gold. And then he decides to get into politics. And yet, that's not necessarily the easiest bridge into politics. And yet, his perspective on what's been going on in this country, you know, it's not that he needs to read the great ancient philosophers like you and I do and these other things. It's that he just instinctively, and he likes to say with common sense, he sees it and he knows it. When he first started running, Victor, I called him a blue-collar billionaire. Is that what it is? What is it exactly?
Yeah, that's a lot of it, because what he did was really revolutionary. He substituted class interest, i.e. the middle class concerns, for tribalism, which is a pre-civilizational idea. So he said to a black truck driver, a white electrician, a Hispanic caterer, you all have more in common as middle-class Americans than you do with your own tribe. And don't listen to your tribalists on the elite left. Listen to us, because we're all more alike than different. That was something that the Republican Party had really never tried. They were kind of pandering to the race and woke group, and he didn't. The other thing he did was really unusual. Is I thought if he was going to be a counter-revolutionary, once the tidal wave came back at him, he would start to compromise. When they went after him to try to destroy him spiritually, monetarily, emotionally, he got stronger. He was a Nietzschean figure. Anything that didn't kill him got stronger, and he kept pushing back. And it was incredible. It was, everybody thought the chemotherapy should be nice because the cancer had taken over the body politic. And of course he said, well, you have to have chemotherapy, and I'm not going to stop the medicine. And nobody had ever really talked like that. And I like that about him. He never gave up. He dug down.
And when you look at his opponents, Victor Davis Hanson, his opponents, the media are his opponents, and they know it, and they preach to each other that they should be, and they talk about how we really can't seek impartiality. We have to stop him. He's a bad guy. They write to each other in public pages. And the Democrat Party, they're really a mess right now. They don't know what to do. They turn to their old habits, their old tricks about democracy, the Constitution's being threatened. But isn't it true? The American people, they're used to Donald Trump now. They know democracy's not being threatened. They know that he's trying to do exactly what he says. I mean, if there's ever been a politician who's doing what he says he wants to do, it's Trump, is it not?
Yeah, it is. And the left really miscalculated, because they felt that because they controlled the institutions that you just mentioned, the media, academia, the foundations, popular culture, they didn't need popular mandates. So Trump came in and he has almost a 70 to 80% mandate on the border, on transgenderism, on foreign policy, and they thought, well, that doesn't matter because we can control these institutions and the flow of knowledge and censor them. But he came along and he revolutionized those things. So with podcasts and online classes and your show and things like that, he created a whole alternate means of communication, and they didn't understand that at all. Joe Rogan had more power, just to take one example, really than the New York Times or the LA Times. And they thought this legacy, this prestigious legacy media was going to convince people against their common sense to agree with them. And the people said, no, you're in the minority and we have other alternatives of information. So it was also a media cultural revolution, counter-revolution.
When we come back, Victor Davis Hanson, what today exactly does the Democrat Party stand for? We know what their so-called principles are. We know what their so-called objectives are. But as they communicate to the American people, the average person out there who doesn't follow politics every day, what are they to make of the Democrat Party? What exactly are their core positions? We'll be right back. Welcome back, America. We're here with our friend Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, we know what the Democrats stand for. It's pretty much, in my view, anti-Americanism, anti-constitutionalism, anti-capitalism. They're a very radical element. They've embraced really all these very dangerous ideologies and so forth that are counter to our founding. That said, they don't really want to reveal all that at once, although they've revealed a lot of it, as I said in my opening statement. But today, where are they going? I can't even tell where they're going. What are they doing? Are they just in complete chaos? They're not sure what to do in response to Trump?
Well, they fundamentally thought we were flawed at the beginning or toxic. We got worse through the course of American history and we're awful today. And a bi-coastal, intellectual, aristocratic elite know what's good for us, who they consider stupid and don't know what is good for us. But right now, their only strategy is that we're going to demonize Trump, get on the airwaves, try to do everything we can to block him in the courts, and hope that during the midterm we can pick up 4 or 5 seats and then impeach him. And that's their short-term tactical approach. Strategically, they don't have a strategy because they see the American people are not happy with this huge government, this huge debt, this racial divisiveness. Everything they brought was sort of the on Midas touch. Everything they touched turned to dross, and people know that. But it's going to be counter-revolutionaries, Mark, are much harder than revolutionaries. To undo what they did is going to be difficult. It's easy to let people in the country. It's hard to find them. It's easy to print money. It's hard to be physically disciplined. It's easy to shut down pipelines and offshore drilling. It's hard to restart them. So Trump has a much harder task to restore America than they did destroying it.
That's so well put. Let me ask you this. Is Donald Trump, do you think, has he fundamentally changed the Republican Party, fundamentally changed the power brokers in the Republican Party, or are they just laying low and they hope to resist and then come back again? You know, after Reagan, the Bushes, I remember George H.W. Bush was talking about a kinder and gentler America, and he rejected Reaganism, even though he won his first term as a result of Reagan. But they rejected Reaganism, and they rejected it right up until Trump, I think. You think they're going to try and pull the same thing with Trump?
I think they thought they were after the first term, and they thought that Trump was done for with the lawfare and the Mar-a-Lago raid and trying to get him off the ballot, the 2 outs. And I don't think they believe it anymore. I think everybody's come over. This Congress, if you look at the Republicans, Mark, it's much different than his first term. And the appointees are much different. And people are, the never-Trumpers are absolutely inert and impotent and irrelevant in a way that maybe they weren't in the first term. So I think that's over with. I don't think anybody is going to vote for Bob Doleism or Mitt Romneyism or John McCainism anymore. It's just not going to happen, whether they like it or not.
Now, I suggest, because they say they are, the Democrats are going to try and shut down the government, and then they're going to blame the Republicans, but that is their strategy, to shut down the government. I personally don't care if they shut it down, but that's a whole different issue. But that's what they're going to try and do. Do you think the Republicans have enough sense now and will be united in the House and the Senate to understand that they either rise or fall together? They ought to put their little points apart for now, get these 1 or 2 bills through, get the Trump taxes and the spending and his agenda through on the border and so forth and so on, and then save the bickering and the fighting for the following year?
I hope so. They're either going to hang together or hang separately. They've got to. And they've got to realize what they're up against. They've got to. they had a great press conference, the Trump administration, when they had Stephen Miller and Waltz out there and Kevin Hassert brilliantly explaining how hard the task is and what they're doing. Communication, communication, communication. And tell the American people that what we're doing has never been tried before. Just have patience. It's going to work. And I think they'll be fine. But if you have a one or two grandstanding congressmen, that they can do a lot of damage. And people are going to have to put pressure on them to hang together.
I have to be honest with you, Victor. I am going to address this if this happens again. If they start peeling off and they undermine this agenda and they undermine that landslide election and they hand a victory to these radical Democrats, then it seems to me it's not just up to the president and not just up to some people in Congress. It's up to the rest of us, you, me, and others, to use our platforms, to use our roles that we have, that God has given us, to push back. Because now is not the time for the Lilliputians to take charge. Now is the time for the leaders. And Congress, it's time for Congress to do its job and to carry its weight. You agree?
Absolutely. You don't have to be perfect to be good, Mark. This utter so-called perfection that some of these people think they're going to attain, it's not possible in this world. We just have to be good enough to stop this revolution. And they better get that message, or we're going to all, we're not going to make it. And that's exactly right. And they need to hear that day after day after day, that we're not going to allow them to disrupt what is a counter-revolution to save the Constitution and the country.
No, and you've heard it here, because I'm definitely going to fight it. I can tell you that right now. Victor Davis Hanson, God bless you, my friend. We always love having you on the program.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.